Hi, I'm Amy Renfrance with New Hanover Soil and Water Conservation District, and today is Watershed Wednesday. This is part 3 of a 4-part series on dissolved oxygen. Over the past 2 weeks, we've learned that oxygen dissolves into water and that aquatic animals need this dissolved oxygen to breathe. Today we're meeting with Audrey Dunn from Cape Fear River Watch to learn more about dissolved oxygen in Wilmington's Greenfield Lake.
Hi, I'm Audrey and I'm the Outreach and Programs Officer at Cape Fear River Watch, a local environmental nonprofit organization whose mission is to protect and improve the water quality of the Cape Fear River Basin for all people through education, action, and advocacy. As part of our mission, we monitor water bodies throughout the lower Cape Fear River Basin through a couple of our programs, such as Swim Guide and Creek Watchers. Creek Watchers is a public initiative. It's a citizen science initiative aimed at better understanding the health of our urban waterways. Greenfield Lake is one of the sites that we monitor through Swim Guide, and we look at different parameters of water quality, such as E. coli levels and dissolved oxygen, conductivity, and pH, among other things. So we're here right now at Greenfield Lake, and I have the instrument with which we monitor some of these parameters. It's called a YSI, and what it is it's a multi-parameter probe. Here we have the probes. Each one measures a different aspect of water quality, and today we're focused on dissolved oxygen. So I'm just going to throw the probe into the water. I make sure it's fully submerged, and I can turn on this handheld device, which is a digital screen where I can read the measurements. So we'll wait for just a few moments for the readings to stabilize. In the meantime, though, you guys are going to have to know what these results mean once I share them with you. So dissolved oxygen can be measured with 2 different units, milligrams per liter or as air saturation percentage. It's important to look at both because, so at equilibrium, you'll have 100% in the air and 100% dissolved oxygen in the water. However, there are some factors that impact the actual amount of dissolved oxygen in the water, such as the temperature and the salinity and the water pressure. So we also have to look at milligrams per liter. So we also have to know what's a good reading, what's a healthy reading, what's not. So if we get a reading of less than 0.5 milligrams per liter, that water is considered anoxic. Less than 2 milligrams per liter, it's considered hypoxic. And in North Carolina, our Department of Environmental Quality has determined that the dissolved oxygen must be greater than 5 milligrams per liter, which is roughly 60% saturation, in order to be considered healthy. That's our state standard. So we can look at our results here. Right now, the probe is pretty shallow in the water, and I'm seeing a dissolved oxygen percentage of 79.2 and 8.81 milligrams per liter. So actually that's really good and well within state standards for North Carolina. If I lower the probe down a little bit further into the water, which I don't know if I can do here actually because it's so shallow, but if I do lower it down, the dissolved oxygen level generally will decrease. Dissolved oxygen levels are lower down in the water body, closer to the floor, because there's more organic matter down there that uses up the oxygen, and as well, it's not coming into contact with the air, which is where the oxygen comes from. So now I want to talk a little bit about why we can see some lower dissolved oxygen readings at Greenfield Lake. So Greenfield Lake is a really important body of water here in Wilmington. In addition to being used intensively for recreational purposes, it also serves as a catchment area for about 2,500 acres of land that surround it. And within that acreage, about 37% is impervious surfaces. And so those are surfaces that are hard, that when it rains down, the water can't seep into the ground and recharge the groundwater. So these are surfaces such as parking lots and roadways and sidewalks. So when it rains down on those surfaces, the water runs off and it becomes stormwater runoff, and it is directed into Greenfield Lake through our stormwater runoff drainage system. And while it's running off, it picks up pollutants such as pet waste and litter and fertilizers and pesticides, among others, before making its way into the lake. And so that's important to know because some of those pollutants contain nutrients such as phosphorus and nitrogen. And while these nutrients aren't necessarily harmful in themselves, in fact, they're beneficial, they're necessary for life and growth and metabolism, when they are found in excessive amounts in water bodies, it creates the condition called eutrophication. And eutrophication is something we're going to circle back to in just a little bit. But basically in Greenfield Lake, it's been studied for the last couple of decades by researchers at UNCW, and they've found consistently high levels of nutrients in this water body. Okay, so to shift gears a little bit, I want to talk about algae. So there is algae always present in the lake, and 95% of that algae is beneficial. It's only a very small proportion of the algae that we sometimes hear about on the news, the toxic algae, but that's a really small proportion. In general, the algae are beneficial. They only become a problem when they reproduce really rapidly in what we call an algal bloom. So an algal bloom can happen really at any time. All that's required is water, sunlight, and a little bit of heat. However, this being the catch, nutrients also really can speed up algal growth, and they can really aid in producing an algal bloom. So in the summertime here in Wilmington, when it's really hot outside, the sunlight is beating down, the stormwater runoff, not only does it contain nutrients from pet waste and fertilizers, but as well it's probably being heated up as it sits on roadways and parking lots, bringing warmer water into the lake. It really creates a perfect storm for an algal bloom to occur. And that's what we have seen over at least the last 15 or 20 years to my knowledge. We've consistently seen algal blooms here on Greenfield Lake. The North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality has actually listed Greenfield Lake as an impaired water body because of the excessive algal blooms. And the reason that these algal blooms are so harmful is that when they die off, they use up the dissolved oxygen in the waterway, creating hypoxic conditions. And so the aquatic organisms, the fish, they don't have the oxygen they need to breathe, and so they become stressed and they can die. We have had fish kills over the years as a result of algal blooms on the lake. And so that's something that the city is taking efforts towards remediating. And I know that in her next video, Amy will be discussing some actions and practices that can be done for healthy waterways. That's it from me. Thank you so much for listening.
That's it for Watershed Wednesday this week. I want to end with a big thank you to Audrey Dunn with Cape Fear River Watch. We'll see you right here again next week for Watershed Wednesday.